Hello, Jamie. If you don't mind, we're going to help you with the mic.
There we go. Can you hear me? Yes.
Okay, very good. Welcome, everyone. So we are here today to meet a man. A special effects expert, a linguist, a dive master, a boat captain, and the owner of M5 Industries. A man who obviously requires no further introductions, as we all know him from the hit series Mythbusters. Please warmly welcome Jamie Hyneman. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we don't have a lot of time, we're just gonna dive right in with a few questions, after which our audience gets to present you with a few of their own.
Okay.
Jamie? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we're sitting too close to each other, aren't we?
Might be. So we have some problems with technology. That's not uncommon at a technical university.
There we go, that's better.
Okay. So
Sorry, I don't mean to be unfriendly.
that's quite okay. I'm quite used to that. So, as some may know, you also hold an honorary doctorate from the University of Twente in the Netherlands for the popularization of science. LUT is now recognizing you for the same achievements. And with your impressive track record, it makes me ask, what makes a good spokesman for science?
Well, I don't know how to answer that other than that one of the things that we did that was very powerful with science was that coming into it without being trained scientists or engineers or educated, properly educated scientists, we had this task that we had to do, which was to investigate these urban legends, and gradually it became questions in general. And all we knew to do was to try to do the best job that we could with it. And so what do you do when you want to do a good job at something? You get methodical, you're careful, you work hard at it. So that's what we did. Now, it turns out that that's all that science and engineering is, or anything that you want to do a good job at. You work hard at it, you're methodical and careful about it. And that's I think, a sort of powerful statement, which basically says that science and engineering isn't just for guys in lab coats, it's for anybody that wants to do a good job of understanding their world. And so if I were to say what it takes to become a good science or spokesperson for science, it's just try to do a good job, you know, and be methodical about things.
Okay, so you're essentially using your powers for good, for promoting science. But in this era of digitalization and social media, also opinions and even false information can go viral within seconds. What would you say to those who think that science is just another opinion, an alternative fact, essentially?
Yeah. I'm so sorry. Let's see. You know how I would answer that is simply like ask the question: do you think that rational thought is better than nonsense? I mean, you can call it alternative fact or whatever you want, but I think of it as simple rationality, logic and clarity of thought and so on, as opposed to, garbage. So if, I don't know, what was the question? Yeah, the whole thing that we're seeing in the States right now is just appalling. I don't know what to say about it. Other than I do like to put it in those terms. There is there is such a thing as clarity and rationality, and so, you know, however that manifests, I think that's something that, you know, allows humanity, allows science, it allows us to do things that make sense as opposed to things that don't make any sense. And if you don't want to make any sense, then go right ahead, see where it takes you.
Let's hope not. Okay, so even though we are on this very noble quest of promoting science and promoting decision making based on science and facts, I still think that it's very important that we have fun at whatever it is that we do. What makes science or engineering fun for you? We can obviously see it is fun, so if you could elaborate on that.
Well, you know, I think that there's something very fundamental about it. So, you know, about fun and humans. It's, you know, children explore their world. They learn about their world by having fun. And basically they're running experiments on it. You know, when they're playing, they're acquiring knowledge about their world, and fun is sort of nature's natural way of motivating people to understand their world. At least that's the way I think about it. I think that there's no different from what a child does when he's running experiments than what a scientist does. It's you know, it's an interesting thing, obviously, as an adult and someone that has acquired a methodology that he or she has studied and acquired skill at, is going to be doing something different than the random play of a child. But then there's also some kind of benefit, I've thought, and I've tried to quantify it, you know, whether taking a tangent from your scientific investigation and doing something playful or random is beneficial, and I think that at times it certainly is, but it's, I've sort of decided that it's largely contextually dependent, and it's not something that one could mechanize, that you've got to, you know, go forward in one linear path and then stop and do a right turn at certain periods, because that's the most efficient way of doing it. I don't think that's possible, but you know, the idea of applying something playful to one's work and having that sort of innate curiosity and you know, treating a scientific investigation as an adventure, for example, instead of drudgery or something that is just something that you learned that you have to do if you're doing science. You know, having a more playful attitude about it, I think certainly is a fundamentally productive thing if you can introduce it into your work.
Okay, so actually to continue from that, we interviewed you previously this spring, and you also talk about playful curiosity on the videos. But it would seem to me that as we get older, we become busy and stressed, we lose some parts of that attitude or even that mental capability. Also, even when we're educated, we lose some of that curiosity for alternative paths. So any advice on how to maintain this playful curiosity, how to keep it thriving in this very hectic life that we are living?
Try.
Okay. That's a fairly simple answer.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was told by someone when a Finn, that I seem like a Finnish male. Keep your head down, do your work, and drink lots of coffee. So, so my answer is just try. You know, do your job.
I think maybe they're also referring to what we experienced here in the beginning, so you're moving a little bit away from me and saying you don't want to be unfriendly to me, but that's also very Finnish. Something we can very much relate to, you know, in the bus, all the Finns, they sit alone, even though you could sit with another person. As long as there's a free seat where you don't have to sit with another person, they're always going to choose that.
Well, I'm actually quite friendly, I just didn't like the sound.
Yes, I understand. Okay, I'm hoping that you would maybe employ some of that playful curiosity of yourself. So let's imagine a hypothetical situation. We would burn up everything on this planet. We would pollute all the waters that we would essentially have to drink, and we would drown in waste. We would have to leave this planet that has been our habitat for such a long time. What would be the one thing, just one thing, we should take with us?
I don't know, a multi-tool?
So a Swiss Army knife, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, oh geez, that's like, okay, so everything's gone to hell, and
Yes.
what's the, you know, I don't know, maybe a spoon and a bowl. You know, that's an impossible question. You know, I certainly wouldn't take my cell phone. I think, are we going someplace?
I would certainly hope so.
Okay, well, then I would figure out where we're going and try to pack appropriately somehow. I'd, you know, if we, although if we'd, I think if we'd managed to get ourselves in that sorry state, I would probably think twice about that, because we'd probably just do it someplace else. So, you know, it's all very depressing. I'm sorry.
Would it help if I told you we were going to Mars?
Sure. Then, you know, I don't. Well, I think I would answer that more about. I find it hard to imagine getting in that situation, and I would probably, you know, be trying to work to fix it here. You know, Mars is fine, and you know, I'd be the first one to go if I had a chance to. But if we've gotten to where we've completely destroyed the planet, I don't know. I'd just be so depressed. I don't know what I would do.
Maybe want to go along with the ride.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. Can I have another question?
Yeah, you certainly can. So you've been around now for a few hours. I think you've maybe familiarized with some of the things that we do here at LUT. Is there something specific that you like?
Well, in Finland in general, and LUT seems like it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. There's all these trees and everything, and I love that. It's you know, I think it's one of the best things that you've just painted a scenario of where we you know, have destroyed everything and polluted everything, and there's nothing left. I don't see that so much in Finland. So good on you, as they say. You seem like you've managed to maintain the environment as you know, more so than many countries, and you've got all these trees and lakes, and you don't, and the place is clean. You don't seem to be intent on destroying it. Which is a lot more than many places. So that's the main thing that strikes me, and also you rightly so seem to have a certain amount of pride in integrity in maintaining your own place. You know, like, and the fact that you've reached out to me, that this university is trying to stay ahead of technology. It's looking at green technologies and so on, and it's doing it. Doesn't seem like it's doing it, you know, for the intent of destroying everything. It seems like you have an attitude of integrating, trying to live with the planet instead of fight it, which I think is wonderful.
You have quite a few seasons behind you with Mythbusters. What would be your most significant learning outcomes out of making the series?
That I hate working with the media. You know, I actually enjoyed doing the science and the exploration. I didn't care anything about myths. It was like, here, I've got to make this thing or you know, figure out how to do something. And everybody was trying to create drama out of stuff. And there's so much with the reality TV that, you know, I sometimes felt that the productions didn't really respect that the science and engineering of itself was interesting and entertaining and worthy. They had to, you know, like as I would put it, if we gave them 10 minutes of Adam falling on his ass and 10 minutes of science, what we'd end up with in the final edit was 9 minutes of Adam falling on his ass and 1 minute of science. So I was tired of that struggle, and I was amazed at it. I guess the other thing that I was amazed at, as far as the series in general, was how much reach it had. You know, the fact that I'm here on the other side of the world. Last year I was in Russia, and you know, talking to thousands of Russians, and in Russian for the most part, and you know, a culture that is so different, and I mean, the fact that you all know me, like, and want me to come here and talk and all this kind of stuff is, I was just sort of trying to pay my bills, you know, and somehow, you know, we reached around the world, which speaks to, in a way, that science and engineering itself, and having especially doing it with a little bit of playfulness or destructiveness that we did, it's sort of a universal language. It's not specific to one country or one culture, because it's reached all over the world. You know, I get off the plane in South Africa and people treat me like I'm family or something like that. And so it's the media as well as the science itself that is amazingly powerful in its reach.
Yes, so even though you maybe dislike working with the media, it has this beautiful outcome of disseminating what scientific methods are and what engineering essentially is.
Yeah, in spite of itself.
Yes, exactly. And I think you're exactly right. So we are a community of very many citizenships here at LUT as well, and for the engineering disciplines, we have the same language, even though we come from different countries and from different, maybe even different disciplines. So we know the same equations, we know the same natural laws, so I can very much relate to what you are saying. Before unleashing our audience with the multitude of questions they probably have for you, I have to ask, what are your plans for the future? What can we expect from Jamie?
Well, I'm doing, the shop that you saw on the show is basically my personal playground now. I am doing research and development for private industry for a variety of projects, and I'm basically having a blast. I'm going in the shop, I close the door and turn up the music, and then come out with a thing that didn't exist before. I'm working with a company called Applied Minds out of Los Angeles that is a sort of a group of brilliant people that are a resource that I can tap into on this work. And so I like to think that I graduated to the real world instead of playing a scientist or engineer on TV. I'm actually doing science and engineering. The education that I received from doing the show is just phenomenal, and this being a university and focused on engineering and science and tech and so on, I'd like to point out that the value of diversity in your studies, because what it ends up allowing you to do is make intuitive leaps to go into areas that you have no direct experience with. If you're too linear with your studies, you can only do or effectively deal with things that are right in front of you. if something is off to the side, or there's a like an obstacle, you have no way of getting around it necessarily, unless it's something that you've done before. Having a broad foundation changes all of that. And so the foundation that I've had from this sort of just trial by fire of doing all this experimentation, you know, media trickery notwithstanding, the things that we were doing was by and large real, and the things that I was learning was real, and it's just been mind-blowing, finding that as a result of that, what I see personally, when I start to approach building something or creating something, not having a clue what I'm doing or how to approach it, simply going in and starting to push and prod on things and finding that foundation of knowledge that I've built just kind of starts to tease things apart, and things happen as if by magic, without any, almost without any conscious thought. It just is there. The solution is there. So it's something that is hard to do in a traditional educational kind of situation, but it speaks to the value of all of the different things that you know, like even a diversity of the people that you're working with can contribute in that sense, provide different points of view, provide that broader foundation of you know, mindset. So I'd encourage people to think of that. I think you often, too often in an educational setting, get buried in a particular linear path, and so there's other things that you should maybe be looking at as well.
You mentioned new things that didn't exist before, so those are the things that you're working in your shop with. Can you mention a few? Or just some examples?
Well, there's one example that you know, most of the stuff that I'm doing is proprietary, and you know, it's like otherwise I wouldn't, you know, like I'm developing new things, and it's either for profit or for things that need to be that aren't public. But one project that I'm well, actually there's a couple that are kind of fun. One is that we've been having these serious fires in the West that are due maybe to global warming or whatever, but water resources are diminishing. The fires that we had in 2015 were jumping about 2 kilometers just from the heat, not burning ash or something like that. Just it's mind-boggling the scale of a burn that can make something burst into flame 2 kilometers away. And there's not a whole lot you can do about that. The firefighters just have to leave and get out of the way. They evacuate the neighborhoods if there's one in the path of the forest fire. And so I don't know that I've come up with a solution for that, but and it's an interesting kind of thought experiment. What I did was I got a hold of an armored personnel carrier a version that's not armored. It's a tracked vehicle like a tank. It's the size of a full-size tank, but it's a lightweight one. This particular one was made for carrying cargo instead of a weapon or soldiers. And I'm putting a 1,000-gallon water tank on the back of it, making it remote control so the firefighters can fight the fire from a safe distance. And one of the interesting features of it is that I decided that we should make it able to actually go into a fire and stay there for at least a time. That would allow it to rescue people and carry them through a fire if that was necessary, but also allow them to more efficiently use fire or use water to fight trees by getting, like you can imagine the difference between a fire that is burning a tree and you have to stay off at a distance and throw water through a hose onto it versus going up to the base of it and shoot up into it, because if you do it that way, you get to the fuel instead of having the water boil up before it reaches it. The water vapor continues on up and inhibits what's above it instead of the inverse sort of situation if you're coming overhead. So you use less water, and you have this ability to keep the firefighters safe. The other thing that I hope to see with it is that if we had a line of these that was put at some optimal place we might find from the front of a fire, we might be able to create a sort of mobile fire break that would take energy out of the fire over time. It's kind of like catching a big fish with light tackle. You don't want to try to do it all at once or you'll lose. So if we were able to take the steam out of the fire over time, we might have a chance. In the very least, I thought that we might be able to create a protective bubble for a neighborhood or something like that if it was in the path of the fire. As it happens, the United States has a number of these. They were built in the 60s and 70s and are considered obsolete hardware, so they're available for a reasonable price comparatively. They still sell them abroad, and I think they go for around $2 million, where you can find them in surplus, though, that have been taken out of service for tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm putting this remote control on it. One of the most interesting things about it is to make it able to go into the fire. This is a robot that has a rainstorm inside it. We run water, these are amphibious, so they're boats. They have bilge pumps in the bilge. It picks up water, it runs it through a heat exchanger in the water tank, and then sprays it everywhere on inside. So that keeps the thing from melting. And so, basically, I have a tank in my shop. Like every guy should have a tank in his shop. Girls do if you want one. The other one that I was talking about, somebody asked me here if I had ever been on a flight simulator, because you have some in one of the labs, and I said, yeah, I've built them. I've got an ATV, like an all-terrain vehicle that is underway that has flight simulators on for each wheel on the chassis instead of a wishbone suspension system. And so this is an ATV or a vehicle that can walk while rolling. It can dance. It can moonwalk. And it should be, eventually it would want to have because each one of the wheels has 6 degrees of freedom. It can, like on a flight simulator. It's got 24 pistons on it, which is kind of impractical, but nobody ever has done that before. So sometimes, and this is one of the other things that I would throw out there that I found from doing the show that was interesting and that was not obvious, was that there were a lot of things that we did that you really don't need to know how to do. Like, you don't need to know how to polish a turd or make a lead balloon. It's there's a good reason they don't normally do that. But what we learned in the process was wonderful at times. Even polishing a turd. There's how things work. What's just it's a material and process thing that goes into that foundation of knowledge that I talked about. So sometimes just simply, we were running experiments with Star Wars. Whether you could live in survive from slicing a tauntaun open, and crawling inside. It's like, which I was at first glance, I was like, I don't want to do this. You're only doing this because it's Star Wars, and you think it's going to be popular. Again, it's this media thing that I hate. But we ended up doing some really interesting experimentation. It had nothing to do with tauntauns. Tauntauns don't exist. It's like the science was bullshit. But what you learn just by trying, by experimenting with things, playing with materials like that, trying to figure out how to do something, it goes into the hopper and will be applied to something else later on that maybe is actually important or useful. So, and that's also very telling about, going back to the beginning, talking about the value of play, because that child is learning a lot of stuff that may seem like it's useful, but it's building this foundation of knowledge that could end up being, it ends up giving them the adaptability to be able to deal with the world, because they've acquired all this stuff that that they can apply, that they didn't know they could at the time, but sure enough, there it comes.
And even though it's Star Wars, I mean, someone has to imagine it first so that we can actually test it. So maybe there is some value in science fiction movies. I'm a big movie buff, so.
Yeah, and I enjoy science fiction as much as the next person. It's just, again, I go back to the media stuff. They wanted us to do things with lightsabers. Go do some crap with lightsabers. And they said, I have this idea, I can make a lightsaber by doing this and this and this, and it's actually kind of practical. So they didn't care about that. They wanted to see Adam and I kind of go at each other with wood swords. So.
I'm sure we'd be interested in how to build a lightsaber, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so I think we now have some time for a few questions from our audience. So please.
It's a small room, you can shout it out.
Guys, I'm small room, okay, better without this. So, you were talking a lot about the science by doing things, right? So, when you try things by yourself, you're starting from scratch. There is a lot of possibilities to fail, and also, if something fails, goes a lot of demotivation. Do you have, let's say, what is your approach to the failure to, instead of get demotivated, encourage yourself and keep pushing forward?
If you have a failure, it's time to celebrate, because you're about to learn something. You can't really help but ask why you failed. If you failed, it was because you did something that you didn't understand, or you made a mistake because you saw things wrong, or you couldn't figure something out in the right way to do something. So when you see that, then you go, well, why did that happen? I didn't intend to fail, and then you know something now that you didn't know before, and that's the motivation. It's like, it doesn't sound like it makes sense, because it sounds like you should, if that's the case, you should go out and try to fail every time. But I'm actually, how did I put that? If I actually go through successfully with some sort of experiment, I'm actually disappointed, because why did I waste my time? If I didn't learn anything in the process of doing something. I suppose if you have a job and you're trying to, you have to make something and then go out and sell it or whatever to earn a living, then you don't want to screw it up. But in terms of what I personally see, if I'm doing some kind of experimentation or project, if I just go ahead and do it, what am I going to pat myself on the back for doing a good job because I knew something? Well, I'm wasting my time. At least that's my attitude about it. So celebrate it, figure out what it was, and then, okay, now we can go forward. That's good.
Thank you.
Yes?
Do you think do you think that science is being appreciated enough in basic education? Because in Finland we are in the situation with upper secondary education that we have one obligatory course of chemistry and one of physics, whereas you have to take 4 of history and 3 of religion, and so it feels very not balanced. So do you think that more resources should be put into teaching science to kids and
Yes.
teens as well. But in general, not just in Finland, but overall in the world, what do you think should be done about it?
Teach more science.
How?
Well, I'd go back to stressing the importance of rational thought, and that's where science lies. So, you know, there's all information is good, and you know, learning history and the arts and all of those things are important, but I would put rational thought, you know, at its core, having some familiarity with the unforgivingness of rational thought. There's, you know, there may be, there certainly are alternatives in terms of, you know, ways of looking at things and things that are also right, but rationality is and methodical behavior and science and so on is I see as fundamental, and something that you know, that I don't know, that's my personal bias, I suppose, but we live and breathe science. You know, we exist with as part of science. We can move forward without knowing our history. But we can't produce food, we can't have health care or things like that unless we have science. So I consider it fundamental, and that it should be at the very top of the list as far as things that we do. You know, so I don't know. Does that make sense?
What do you think about the future of the Earth? Do you think that it will be a total disaster, or
The future of what?
Earth?
What do I think about the future of Earth? Will it be a total disaster? This is Finland, isn't it? You guys are, this is depressing. Well, let's see. What do I think about the future? You know, I sort of think that, on the one hand, there's a certain kind of, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, because what the hell do I know? But when I look, if you fly across, you know, a country, I see things that look to me like an infestation. You know, see this, it looks like they're like mold that was growing on you know, some soup or something that is, there's little spots of it that are kind of spreading out where all the lights are, and you know, concentrations of it, and the areas where there are cities are, it's like it's completely infested. And it's not to say that I think that humans shouldn't be here and so on, but I think there's a certain kind of organic thing that we are. We're like microbes, and you know, we grow and we eventually consume all of the nutrients that are in the soup, and so. But then we find more soup, and because we fly there or whatever it is, and so I think that there's a certain kind of on the one hand, yes, you can look at that as we're doing things that we shouldn't by destroying our environment, but on the other hand, there's a certain kind of amoebic, inevitable, figure it out. Does that make any sense? Like, because we kind of start to push on things, and we eventually modify ourselves or figure out solutions. There's a lot of we would have thought that I think the population that we're sustaining now would have been unthinkable a while back, and yet we're still doing it, and we haven't completely destroyed ourselves. I'd like to think that we'll eventually be able to go there. There was also something that I was reading about, that, you know, populations are actually, you know, are starting to, like the number of people per what is it, children per capita is being reduced. It's like things are changing, and so some of this explosive exponential growth that you might expect is starting to back off in some areas. So maybe we have hope. Yes, sir.
Okay, one practical question. You have tested many cars, but which car do you have or use nowadays in your home? Which car?
Which car do I have? Okay. My wife and I both have a Prius. And you know, it is quite simply as far as that goes. You know, we get 50 miles plus per gallon, and you know, it's in the top of what cars do that. I'm not an advocate of the cult of the automobile. You know, the cult of the automobile as a status symbol or as something to cherish. For me, it's transportation. If it is efficient, if it you know, carries the load that I need to have, if it doesn't break down, then that's what I'm buying. And the Priuses, they seem to last as long as any cars. We've been able to, my wife and my dog and a surfboard and all our luggage have been taking long trips with the surfboard in the Prius. It actually works. So.
I'm sorry, we have to start wrapping this up. I'm sure that you have a lot of questions, but we're running out of time. Okay, thank you, Jamie, for answering the questions from our audience. You'll be receiving your honorary doctorate now on Friday. But before that, we have something maybe a bit more practical for you. You talk about curiosity a lot, and I'm sure that that's something that we can all relate to. It's essentially an attitude, a state of mind about questioning without prejudice, without expecting a specific result, to sort of look beyond what is to actually get to what can be. And I think that a university essentially embodies that thinking, or at least it should. But we're quite lucky to not to be on this journey alone. So science provides us with tools, as you discussed, methodologies, and it also provides us with knowledge and I think also a sort of a pool of unanswered questions and even myths to bust if someone wanted to maybe continue on that line. We already know that you are one of us, so that's maybe obvious since you are here and you're receiving the honorary doctorate, but I'm very much hoping that we could make this official in a specific way. So if you'd be so kind as to accept this tiny gift, maybe you can use it at your workshop. Please,
Excellent.
let's have a warm welcome. Let's have very big applause for Jamie.
What is it? Kiitos?
Ole hyvä. I'm sure you have a lot of programs still to go, so we are wrapping up here. Thank you very much, those of you who are online and those of you who are present here. Thank you.